Okay.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of SMB Stars. This is a show where we feature unique and inspiring stories of SMB, small and medium sized business owners. My guest today is Suhail Kamran. He is the co founder and CEO of Chaw Street Food. I'm super excited about this chat today because Chaw Street Food is a Pakistani eatery which is based in the Washington, D.C. metro area. And I'm based in Washington, D.C., and it's one of my absolute favorite. My daughter loves their French fries. They're called mirchi fries, which are fries with some seasoning on them. She loves those. So it's our go to spot every weekend. I'm super excited. So, Hill, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's such an honor. It's so nice to be talking in a different setting.
Awesome, awesome. So, Hill, to kick things off, why don't you please introduce yourself and Chaw Street Food for our audience?
Sure. So I have a very almost written up spiel for different scenarios. So I'll start off with mine. So I, along with my partners, we started Cha about 4 years ago, a little over. And the idea of Cha was very organic and very simple. Of like we wanted a hangout spot for people from our community who didn't want to hit the clubs and all of that stuff. A safe space where you can come, feel nostalgic, and hopefully enjoy the food and drinks along the way as well. Our tagline is bring people and flavors and people together. So we bring the flavors from back home and we bring the people and we put them all together. So the general idea was that we started off as a food truck because, to be honest, when we like any other entrepreneur, when you're starting out, cash is limited. I feel like cash is limited for, for a long time. But
Yeah.
cash is limited, so you're just making sure that you go into whatever you can afford at the time. So what we could afford was a food truck. We couldn't afford a full-on restaurant. The cost was going to be too high, and it was the middle of pandemic. It was October of 2020 when nobody was financing restaurants or any food-related businesses.
Right.
We got an opportunity to open up in a space right behind a mall, and we set up. So our background was basically design. So me and my wife, we were running a design company for a while, and so we knew we could set up the space how we want to set it up. But the food was always an issue because we were like, oh my God, how are we going to do the food side of things? Because we didn't have any commercial experience, to be honest. We didn't have a lot of non-commercial experience either. So we were like, okay, how are we going to go about it? So backtrack before October, February of that year, Saba and our other partner Sophia, we shipped them off to Pakistan, and they go to this dhaba wala, and long story short, they told him, "Hey, we want to learn this stuff." And
Oh my gosh, I cannot believe it. So the
yes,
co-founders actually went to Pakistan to
they didn't
learn
have
the
any experience.
recipes.
Yeah, so
That is
the
fantastic.
idea was to get recipes, and the idea was to get like some sort of experience and coming back.
Okay.
I'll be honest, like they went to this dhaba wala and they asked him like, could you teach us? You're not from here, so there's no competition scenario here.
Uh-huh.
And he was like, I can, but I cannot take money from you. He was from this part of Pakistan where they don't take money from women if they're buying anything.
Okay.
But so he was like, but you can buy me a phone. You can buy me a camera
Okay.
phone so I can talk to my brother in the village, video chat with him. So they
Okay.
did that, and he made them work every night from like literally 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. And they would ask rotis, all of the jazz.
Okay.
But an interesting thing happened. It was a good experience, good learning experience. But when they came
Uh-huh.
back, the recipes didn't really matter because all the ingredients were different in the US compared to in Pakistan. But something got into them. They started reverse engineering everything. 6 months fast forward, we were ready for our first food truck on, I believe, October 16th. And I remember we asked one of our friend who owned a restaurant. We're like, okay, we're starting this thing. It's a food truck with food and drinks
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
what should be our prep method, how much should we prepare, and it's like, you know what, the worst thing for a food business is that you run out of product on day one. So make sure you don't run out of product. So make sure you have enough that whoever's coming in, they're fed. We're like, okay. So he's like, a food truck is a small unit, so maybe prepare for 1,000 people. So we were like, okay, since he told us don't run out, so we're like, okay, let's prepare for 1,500. So
Okay.
we prepared for 1,500 people, and in hour number two, we ran out of our food because we sold so many. There were like 2,000 people who showed
This
up.
was on day one of the
This was
truck.
day one, right when we opened. We didn't know the hype was this big. Because
Okay.
I think the issue was that it was a fun concept that wasn't done before, at least in the area, and it was outdoors, so it was a safe space for people to hang out, and there were a lot of COVID restrictions at the time, so
Okay.
everybody showed up.
Okay.
But
So actually not having money worked out in your favor because
it
then it
did
made
in
you
a
do
lot
the
of
food
ways.
truck concept and that allowed people to just hang out in a safe zone outside.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
like I think not having money sometimes is a blessing as well because
Yes,
you become
yes.
more creative.
Yeah. Totally
So
agree.
that's what so anyway, day one happened and nobody was like super upset. Oh my God, your food ran. People were just enjoying the space and they were like appreciative that you created something like this.
Okay.
And then we learned along the way. Then, I remember the aunties would come to us and be like, "Oh my God, your Kashmiri chai sucks." And be like, "Okay, how do we fix it?" Be like, "Here's a recipe." We're like, "Okay, we'll take the non-commercial recipe, try to fix it." We were
Okay.
in a very learning phase.
Okay.
We're like, "Oh, we got to learn." And we still are to a certain extent, but in terms of recipes, we would listen to everybody who was coming through, and every night we would have a meeting at the end of the night and be like, "Okay, what went wrong?" and yada yada yada. A year into it, we realized, okay, the food truck is a good model, but for us, it wasn't scalable.
Okay.
And if we were to do it, it wasn't going to be one-off. So,
Mm-hmm.
because we realized like it's a scalable business, right? You're eating the same burger over and over and over again. Just do
Right.
it right, lock the recipe, lock the process, and just do it over and over again all the time.
Yeah.
So that's what we realized that we wanted to do. Food truck has had a lot of limitations, and the food was it's limited space. You cannot do restaurant quality food out of a food truck. It's hard, at least in my experience, it was.
Okay.
So we got an opportunity to open up our first brick and mortar a year into it at
Okay.
Tyson's.
Okay.
So, which is a very happening area, a lot of
Yeah.
almost a destination in a way.
Yeah.
It was one of the most, I remember my attorney came to me and he's like, listen, this is the one of the most predatory deals I've ever seen. Are you sure about
Okay.
it? I was like, I'm not sure, but to be honest, my concern was that if we don't switch, we're gonna die.
Uh-huh.
So it was sort of like existence situation
So
that
what was the concern of your attorney? Was it inexpensive? Was it
expensive.
okay?
There was a huge collaterals, all of that.
Okay.
But
I got all of
there's
that.
no
Okay.
room to fail, right? If you
Okay.
fail, you cannot make rent for a couple of months.
You're done. Got it. Okay.
So we signed on, and I remember like it was a lot of like standing in the mall and giving our samples out because people didn't know what this. At that time, our name was Cha Tea House. People thought we
Mm-hmm.
were a boba place.
Uh-huh.
Explained it to them that in our part of the world, tea houses are a lot more than just tea. It's food, it's a cafe.
Mm-hmm.
So then we went through a branding chain and we changed our name to Cha Street Food with a focus on food, and then
Correct.
Cha is like we provide tea.
Okay.
That rebranding, I think, was one of the best things that we ever did because it
Okay.
basically cleared it out for the customer. Be like, okay, this is what you do. Your cha, which is in a lot of languages, people know what it means, and street
Yeah.
food. Okay, it's something related to street food. So anyway, so we opened in Tyson's, and I think
Mm-hmm.
a few months into it, it was just started coming in. And Tyson's, I think, has been
Mm-hmm.
very, very, very nice to us. It was one of the best deals we made.
Yeah.
And then it was just along the way, we were just like fixing the processes and all that. And I remember at some point, because, not having the money and not having the experience, those are two things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have the experience, you don't have the money. We didn't have
Mm-hmm.
neither. So we didn't have the money, we didn't have the experience. And I think both sort of in some way worked out for us. Not having the
Mm-hmm.
money helped because we started small. Not having the
Right.
experience helped because we were always hungry. We wanted to make sure because we were insecure of not having the experience. We were like, we got to learn. We got to learn. And what did we do wrong? But then we realized as we went along that there is a balance in that too. You are not gonna, with all due respect, listen to every feedback that's gonna come through because if you
Correct.
do that, you're gonna just be a mesh of something. You just got to
Right.
figure out your niche and be confident that this is what I do and this is what I do best, and then just keep improving it. So that's what we did, and now we have then a year, 2 years after that, we opened our second location in Sterling, which is about another 20-25 minutes from our initial location. So now we're
Okay.
in the growth mode, and we're looking for new locations, and
Okay.
moving on.
Okay, wow, that is quite a story. That is so fantastic. It's been quite a journey for the last 4 years, right?
Yep.
And so much goodness in kind of how you've approached it, where you went from a food truck to one location to now two locations to now looking at expansion. So tell me what you mentioned you and your wife had a design company, and then you had no experience whatsoever in the food industry.
Yeah.
So, like, what was going on in your minds when you decided that, okay, I want to start a food company? And yes, of course, you
Yeah.
started with the food truck, but then I'm assuming, like, even then, back then, your vision must have been bigger than that, right? Because, like, now 4 years in, oh no,
Actually, day
was
one
it?
vision wasn't there.
It wasn't there.
No, it
Okay.
wasn't there. It was supposed to
Yeah.
be. We did a quick backhand, sort of like on the napkin math sort of a thing. We were like, okay,
Uh,
how much do we have to make our investment back? I remember we spent
okay.
like 60 odd thousand.
Okay.
on the truck and branding and equipment and everything. And we were like, okay, how much do we have to make our 60,000 back in 3 months? Because essentially how it's initially how it started was that Sabah, my wife, she grew up in the US. I grew up in Pakistan. I moved here for school, stuck around, and found a job and everything. So after we got married, we I used to go to back to Pakistan every year. And after we got married, she started coming to Pakistan as well. And every time I would come back, I would be like, yeah, there's no good space for place for like chai, just like something. And like Pakistan is a big thing, it's a supposedly a dry country, so a lot of time where you're hanging out at these like chai places, right, at night,
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
and they're open 24 hours and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
we were like, and then she was like, she almost not in an encouraging way, she's like, why don't you do it? It's not that hard. Figure out the chai and do some paratha on the side. So that's how it started. We're like, yeah, okay, I can do it. And then
Okay.
she was like, "Oh, you know what? Actually, since you are thinking about doing it, we should do something with food." And then pandemic happened. Then pandemic came, and our main business was event designs, wedding design. Nobody was getting married at that time, so we got some break. And I think the entrepreneurial thing in you kind of keeps pushing you. You don't want to just sit down, and you're like, "Okay, what
Right.
else could we do?" So it was a
Right.
more of a project for us to like, oh, let's get our kids involved. You'll see like some of our original videos. You'll see a lot of our kids in the mix as well. They're like sitting in there.
Okay.
My daughter used to take her at-home classes from the kitchen where we used to do all the commissary.
Wow. Okay.
We were pretty much involved, and we are like, okay, you know what? It's a 3 month thing. We're gonna run it from October to December when the weather is cold. We're gonna shut down, but we have to
Uh-huh.
make our money back in 3 months.
Uh-huh.
But we got lucky. We made our money in like about a month.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So and then when that happened, then it was like, oh my God, what is this? Why are people paying for this and all of that? Then the vision started coming through, and then it wasn't that we wanted to do one off. Then we were like, okay, now we need to. Is it scalable? Is it because the restaurant industry? The problem is it has bad reputation, especially in our community as well. It's like, my God,
Yeah.
24/7 operations and
Margins
chefs
are
are
so
in there.
thin.
We wrote
Correct.
down
Chef.
what the issues were. We were like, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
funding, number one, because it does take. I mean, even a small restaurant would take you a couple of $100,000 to make, with the regulations and everything. And number two, it's 24/7. Okay. Number three, it's just like a very low margin business. So how do we fix it? A low margin business, the only way you can fix it is increase the volume. Go high volume if it's low margin. And we were coming from a very boutique design company where the margins were insane. So we were like, okay, moving on to that. So when we started looking into this, we were like, okay, which are the items that we can fix? We're like, okay, have a right team, have decent funding. So we very early on, we raised money, we created a board from outside investors. We were like, okay, we need adults in the room, so we got experienced people, not in the company, but on the board, so they can guide us. So we kind of did all of those things, and then it started playing in a way that we were like, okay, no, now it's good. But yeah, to answer your question, the vision wasn't there from day one. It wasn't like, okay, we're gonna
Okay.
do this a year,
Okay.
move to Tyson's.
Got it. Got
But
it.
now
Okay.
we
Okay.
actually sometimes joke about it because in the
Uh-huh.
truck days, our menu would change. Like the chef would come from the back and be like, "I don't have this today. How about we do this?" And then somebody would go in and change the menu. Okay, this is what we have today. So it was a
That's
lot of that.
awesome.
Very scruffy. But
Okay.
now we have a process. Now it takes any product launch takes
Yeah.
about 6 to 8
Yeah.
weeks for us to launch
Yeah.
because we
Yeah.
have those
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
method, the processes
Yeah.
in place.
Yeah. Yeah.
We also want to make sure that our clients know
Yeah.
that we are a little bit more sobered up now. We're not in that early phase where we're
That
just
is
doing
that is
things.
amazing. It is amazing. So you talked about funding. So help me understand. So you did the food truck that was 60 grand out of your own savings, I'm
Yep,
assuming.
out of our
And
own.
then once the food truck was successful and you thought, okay, this is something now I can do and we can go into brick and mortar, is that the time that you brought in outside funding? And what was that process like?
But that process was very organic as well. So I remember one of our, I can't name her, but one of our biggest investors, she's like part of a very exciting and all from the tech side. She was visiting Virginia from California, and I remember like we all used to work at that time. And I always say I'm probably like the laziest employee of Char right now, but at that time I was in it, right? Chai and all that. So I remember that night it was really busy, and there's somebody said, "Hey, listen, let's have a separate station for chai." So I was
Okay.
that chai station guy. So I was taking orders, giving chai.
Uh-huh.
And so somebody came
This
from
was in Tyson's or this was in the
this was
food
at the
truck?
food truck.
Food truck. Okay.
Yeah, so somebody came from
Okay.
the side and said, "Can I talk to the owner?" And I said, like, "Ma'am, I swear I don't look like the owner, but I am the owner. I'm like chai all over me and like a mess. But the owners people think best dressed and all that. So it wasn't nothing like that. So
Okay.
I thought there was an issue with her chai. So I was like, "Is there anything wrong with your chai?" She's like, "No, I just want to talk to you. This is amazing what you guys are doing. Do you have a business card?" And I was like, "We didn't business cards because we didn't think we would go that long. They would need business card. But
Uh-huh.
it's really busy right now. So here's the thing. Take my phone, text yourself. Text yourself and I'll call you in the morning." So it was very not, I don't recommend like going to a potential investor like that. I didn't know it was going to be an investment. So
Okay.
anyway, in the morning I called her up and she's like, "I loved what you guys are doing. I was visiting from California. I was somewhere else and somebody said, oh, there's this place. You should try it."
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
So she said, "So I want to be involved. What do you guys need? You need the money." I was like, "You would be wasting your money with us right now, but
Uh-huh.
what's your story?" So I found out her story, where she was from, what she was doing, and I was like super excited.
Okay.
She was from Pakistan, and
Okay.
I was like, I don't need the money because you'll be wasting. I don't know what I'm going to use the money for.
Uh-huh.
What I do need is let's stay in touch. So we started
Okay.
staying in touch, and at some point where when we were moving to Tyson's, that's when
License. Okay.
and we reached
Okay.
out to her, and it was like for her, she was like it was a no-brainer. She was waiting, she was excited.
Okay.
So then we got her, and we got a couple of other investors involved at that point. But the process itself for us, I feel like now when we're going to go for our first proper round of funding,
Mm-hmm.
now
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be a more formal. A lot of
Got it.
no's, reach out to
Got
100
it.
people, get two
Got
yeses.
it.
So a typical
Got it.
fundraising would be now, but before it was just, I don't think so that
Okay.
relates to a lot of people. I don't think so most people get funding like that.
Okay, okay, that's super impressive. So, what was it about what you were doing that got these initial investors excited? Is it just the food? Is it the concept? Is it your scrappiness? Like all of it? Like what was it, do you think, that connected the most with these initial set of people who
I think
came
it
on
was the
board?
vibe. It was the overall vibe. It wasn't the
Oh,
food. I don't think so. The food is much better now than it was at that time. I'll tell you that. I mean, some
okay.
people would say, "Oh, your food and the food truck
Mm-hmm.
was good," but I think
Mm-hmm.
overall we are much more solid unit now than we were in the food truck. I think what for them scruffiness. I don't know if like if I think about investing in a place, yeah, maybe I look at the scruffiness, but scruffiness would not be a turn on for me. It
Okay.
would be something that I would like if I can look at the scruffiness and be like I can fix it, then yes. So I think
Okay.
it was the overall vibe. What she said was,
Mm-hmm.
it was the music and it was the Kashmiri chai that brought her back.
Okay. Okay.
And I always say that cha is a place where I want you to feel at home. Doesn't matter where your home is. Your home could be Delhi or your home could be Lahore. Your home could be New York. Whatever
Mm-hmm.
home to you is the comfort that we want you to feel. You know.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
think that's what it is.
Awesome. 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 So one more last question on funding and then we'll move on to some other topics. So for a lot of small businesses, right, like funding is one of those challenging pieces. Folks have ideas and then majority of the time, they're working full-time jobs while figuring out on the side, like what do they want to do? And then to make that leap from a full-time job to a business ownership, funding is that bridge that a lot of people kind of think about how do we cross that. So you mentioned like before Cha, you had a design company, right? And I'm assuming before that design company, you were working
Yeah,
job. So how did you approach that? Like how did you go from like working to a design company? I think that the path to Cha from a funding standpoint is someone like you had savings and you could invest and like you had all this plan. But what was the process like from like a 9 to 5 to the design company? How did you make that shift?
that was the hardest, I think. I mean, because I think how it started was that my wife actually initiated it. So she would come back from a very good job, very good corporate consulting job, which she loved. But I think she got a supervisor which she didn't like, and and that's why I say, it's leadership is very important because one bad leader could change your
Change.
course. I mean, for her, it worked out well, but she would come home and sort of like it was a dinner table rant, be like, "Oh my God, he did this today, he's that, he's this," and I was like, "Why don't you do something on your own? What do you want to do?" And she said, "I want to do a design company." And to be honest, we had just gone married. We got married pretty young, and we were my mom, God bless her soul, she used always to say, "You guys live like college roommates." Like
Uh-huh.
the sofa here. It wasn't like, when you get married, a house is properly. It was nothing like that. But I was like, design? I've never seen you design, so I don't know.
Uh-huh.
But
Uh-huh.
she said like, let's take a shot at it. Let's see
Okay.
how it goes. That too, I remember I had a little bit of we had a little bit of money saved up for a house down payment or something, and she was like, why don't we invest in a business and we can get to the
Okay.
house later. We didn't have kids, nothing. So
Okay.
I was like, okay. So she started it, and I think 2 years into it, I just really started enjoying the business side of things. And I would tell her, I was like, listen, I want to quit my job. And she's like, no, you're the only one who's bringing money in. The business is not
Okay.
making money. Why would you quit your job? So I remember
Uh-huh.
really it brought to a point. I think you also have to listen to your body and what's happening around you. I think when it's meant to be, it's going to bring you to a point where it's going to be so frustrating to live in the situation you're in,
Such a.
you know, that you would want to come out of it. So what I did was, but you also have to be not super emotional. I think in my risk profile at that point was a lot different than now. I could take bigger risks then. Now I have to be like, okay, you know what, the kids, all of that. So the risk profile is a lot different. But at that point, what I did was I went to, so I started with engineering. I loved my job. But at some point, I started not liking it that much. It was becoming monotonous and all that. And the business side of what Sabah was doing
What's
was
more
way
exciting?
interesting. And it was like, I always used to think scalability, how can we get different designers under her wing? And every designer is doing their own weddings and all that. So I went to my supervisor at that time and I said, hey, listen, I need to, there's this one thing I want to try. And if I don't try it now, I don't think so I ever will. So I think I should quit my job. And he's like, don't quit. Just take a few months off, unpaid. And so I was like, okay, that's great. I have my job secured. So I didn't have that worry. I think up until 3 years into the business, I had that security that I can go find a job because I
Got
had
it.
enough experience. I had 5 years experience at that time, and I was like, I can go back and look for another job. Now I don't think so. Now I don't think so. I'm employable, but at that time more so. Moved from engineering to design company with Sava, and then we grew that to a decent size. We didn't get any funding from outside. We didn't need to. It was a
Okay.
self-funded, good business. It was only two of us, so it was fine. But we didn't need to scale it to. It was a very boutique business. But when we moved to Cha, at that time, also no idea that we're going to raise any funds. But when we got our first funding, to be honest, it was nice. It was nice in the sense
Nice.
that it gives you that, and it could go anywhere, right? I mean, it could be really good, it could be really bad. But for us, what we really saw when we started hanging out with these VCs or whatnot is that okay, there's a whole different side of things. Obviously, you
Correct.
want to protect your equity as much as you can. You want it to be as painful
Yeah.
as long as you can, because
Yeah.
that's gold. Imagine like
Yeah.
5 years from now that extra
Yeah.
2% you gave. But there's a fine balance. Everybody is gonna. I always say, do what you feel like at that point. What's good for your business, but you also what does your gut say?
Okay.
So that's what
Okay.
we did, and I think it's always going to be uncomfortable. Now we are at some point planning our first proper round of funding, and I think it's always going to be uncomfortable. You're giving a part of you to somebody.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. All right. So let's pivot into talking about customers. So, how did you guys approach getting your first customer? Like, what was that like getting your first customers for the design company? And for the cha company, you mentioned like it was, the first 2 hours you ran out of like, the food. How was that? So, how did you approach, getting the word out and getting customers in your first company? And how was it different in the second company?
First company was very slow and organic, right? So it took us about like 4 months to get the first client. I remember we made a scrappy little website. Instagram wasn't that big at that time. Yeah, it was, but I mean, it wasn't like how it is now. So we started off just going to a lot of social events, so networking
Okay.
events. So
Okay.
there we'll find other people who are also in the same field, and we'll get to learn a lot more. And then it was like I still remember it was a $1,500 check for the business that we got for our first wedding, and that was amazing. I probably still have it somewhere.
Okay.
It took us 4 or 5 months. When it comes to Cha, what happened was that they were really so since we were coming from the wedding industry, we knew a lot of like top class photographers.
Okay.
So we
Okay.
actually had really
Content, good
good
content.
friends of ours who
Okay.
normally they were charged probably, I don't know, in thousands for their
Okay.
project. But
Okay.
when we had spent everything, I remember we had like $2,000 left. And I went to them and I was like, hey, listen, I have this
Uh-huh.
project. I don't have a lot of money. Do you
Uh-huh.
want to do it for me? And I
Uh-huh.
knew once these two, it's a power couple. Once these two guys get on board,
Uh-huh.
they will do anything to make it really nice. So we spent $2,000 on that video, and that's all the money we had.
Okay.
We didn't spend anything on any marketing. We would just
Okay.
post on some Facebook groups and all that. But I think
Okay.
that video did really well for us. So what they did was they were trying to create an idea of that whole immigrant story of people, kids, they came from Pakistan and all that. So they
Okay.
actually hired somebody in Pakistan to create footage of food
Nice.
and drinks in Pakistan, and they were like, "This is how it is in Pakistan. That's how what we are bringing it here."
Okay. So that
So
connected with
that
people.
connected.
Got it.
But
Okay.
little did we know in the behind the scene that video was doing rounds.
Okay.
So when we opened up, we didn't have any idea how good. To be honest, I still don't have any idea. When we open, we don't know if it's going to be a line out the door or
Mm-hmm.
there's nobody's going to show up. I still have that feeling when we opened Sterling. I was, oh, what if nobody shows up? You know?
Yeah, yeah.
But that anxiety always is there.
Okay, so that one strong piece of content kind of helped with the initial customer acquisition for Cha. So staying on this kind of like digital marketing vein, what do you do today to get the word out? And I'll tell you one of the anecdotes. I was in your Tyson's location as always, and this was a time during Christmas, and I was waiting in line for the restrooms. Guy and this family had come down from New York, and they were going from New York to Florida, and they stopped in Tyson's only for cha. And we struck a conversation because we were both waiting in line, and the guy was like, so do you live in the area? Like, how often do you come to this place? And like all of that. And he's like, yeah, it's a really nice place. Like, I saw like this on Instagram, and I got excited, so I drove my family from New York to a pit stop in Tyson's just for cha. That was like so incredible. So what do you do today, like to get the word out? Like, how do you make sure, like, how do you use these digital channels?
So, to be honest, we've experimented with different things. The strategy has changed over time. We've experimented with social media agencies and advertisers, advertising, and all of that. And now, where I am at this stage right now, I think I want to try, we want to try putting all of our. I mean, people say don't put all of your eggs in one basket, but when you don't have a lot of eggs, you got to figure out what basket you're going to put it in, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I think right now we're focusing 100% on social media, Instagram,
Got
TikTok,
it.
and we're
Okay.
adding YouTube Shorts. That's
Okay.
devising our strategy. So these are the three channels, and we want to work on our content, the kind of content we produce heavily. So we are in the process of hiring in-house content creators and all of that stuff. Because essentially, at some point, like how people say McDonald's is not a burger company, it's a real estate company. A lot
Yeah.
of businesses nowadays are not the product that they're selling in a way, they're a lot of content.
E- Exactly. Yeah. It's the emotion they evoke, right? Like, what do
It's the
you,
emotion
what,
you evoke, and the thing
correct.
is, the
Yeah.
reach is the ROI on this is sometimes not trackable, but like also it's when you do track it, it's amazing.
Okay.
So no matter how much you're going to put in, but you have to work on. I think a lot of time what I have done in the past is like for Instagram, for instance, not content wise maybe not that strong, but like blast boost the story, boost the heck out of the story, right, or boost the heck out of the but you have to understand your product or your content needs to be good. If your content
Correct.
is good and people are sort of like relating to it, and at Cha, I always tell anybody who is working on the advertising side, be like, this is, and not to sort of like say it because it's my baby, but Cha for me is a gold mine for content creators because you have content when it comes to food. You have content in terms of the community, like we're doing live music nights and all of that stuff.
Right.
You have
Right.
content in terms of the space. It's a very
Right.
Instagrammable space. The food is Instagrammable. And, to be honest, we are now 100% sort of like 100% of our workforce is not Desi. They're not Pakistani. So
Okay.
to hear somebody who's not from
Yeah.
the culture to be like, oh, how does this Golgappa or Pani Puri work? And they're making everything. It's a pretty funny side of that behind the scenes.
Okay. Okay.
So, like, I remember one of our supervisors, he was
Uh,
from Colombia, and
uh,
I didn't realize. I just assumed like all the South Americans they eat a lot of spices, so they'd be okay. And he almost choked on one of her sauces. I was like, oh my God, like So we were like, okay, we have to be careful because he's like, I don't eat any spice. So those kind of things. So there's a lot of material that you can
okay.
piggyback from. So that's to
Okay.
answer your question. That's what we're focusing on to create great content and then focus on
Awesome.
those three channels.
Okay, okay. So I know we're at time. So I guess kind of like my last question would be, we talked a lot about Cha and the evolution of the business. I want to end on about you. So how have you as an individual, as an entrepreneur changed from your design company to starting Cha to now where you are? And how do you see like how do you plan to tackle some of the challenges as you grow Cha?
I think for me personally, how I have changed is I think I've become a bit, was somebody else the other day was saying, you become a bit boring. So boring in a way, but
Okay.
I'll take a positive twist to it, right? So the boring for me is, I think I've become more calculated, right? At the end of the day, yes, you want to enjoy your business, but to be honest, nobody's going to enjoy business when there's no money left in the pot, right? So you have to be, as a leader, it's my responsibility my fiduciary responsibility to my team and to my investors to make sure that Cha is cash flow positive. We're looking ahead. We're growing, growing, growing. I think back in the day, maybe I was a little bit more, okay, it's okay if we lose money. I mean, I care when we lose money, but I think I'll care a lot more if we lose money. I'm more calculated. Leadership wise, to be honest, it has been a learning curve. I think what Cha has taught me a lot more than what any of my previous businesses taught me from leadership wise. I never, they say you have to be, as a leader, you have to be trustworthy, you have to be truthful, you have to be all of that, right? And trustworthy people, I always took it as trustworthy that, you give me $10 and I'll keep it safe. That sort of trustworthy. But in this, it's a little bit different. Trustworthy, in a sense, is if you're taking on a task, you're given a task, you take responsibility. You make sure you do
Correct.
it. Your team
That is
can.
so important. Yeah.
It's so important, and I think your
Yeah.
team needs to, yeah, like for instance,
Yeah.
your team under you needs to be able to. You need to
Yeah.
inspire them,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
also should be able to lean on you
Yeah.
in difficult time. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think one thing that I learned from my previous business, which was the wedding business, was
Mm-hmm.
that Cha is, people say, oh my God, it's like so much pressure. I don't feel the pressure of Cha. Like even when it's like live music going on, there's like tons of people and there's like lines and all of that.
Yeah.
I don't feel the pressure because to be honest, at the end of the day, no offense, it's a burger we're selling. It's not a life or death situation, God forbid. But I was coming from a business where somebody was getting married.
Yeah.
Most people don't get a second shot. At a burger, people will get a second shot. Okay. I'm
I know
not
you
saying
can
it's good
fix
or bad.
it. You can,
Fix it,
yeah.
But I
Yeah.
can't say to
That's a good way to look at it,
Tina
actually.
that, hey Tina, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
this wedding didn't go well. We'll do better job next time. There's no there's no guarantee. So here
Yeah.
I can be like, I'm not saying do that. Make sure you give a
Yeah.
perfect product every single time. But it's a high volume business. Things could go here and there. So I think that's that experience
I
I learned.
love that mindset, seriously.
And in terms of like change, I think I've changed in terms of like I have a lot more financial knowledge than I had at that time. I think in this day and age of ChatGPT, you have no excuse. You can learn everything. You can create your marketing strategies. You can create your growth strategies. It's a level
Yeah.
playing field for most people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Cool. So, Hill, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation. And, yeah, thanks for coming on the show and sharing all of this with us.
No, Kamal, thank you so much. And this is amazing. I mean, to be honest, when I started Chai, a lot of aunties would come to me and be like, I always wanted to do this, And there's a lot of people who want to open a chai spot, and I hope we see a lot more. But in this case, I always wanted to do this. Because I always have these conversations with like all these business people, and I'm like, it would be so nice to package it. I'm
Uh-huh.
big on podcasts. I'm big on like anything business. Read. I can't read, but I mean, I can read, but I have a hard time like paying attention. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. So this is
Yeah.
great what you're doing, and I'm honored. To be honest, I didn't. I'm surprised that I made the cut. I appreciate it,
Yeah.
but looking forward to a lot more of these.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Sohail.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.